Jim Browdy. Politics, opinion, insight. Now, this is Newsnight with Jim Browdy.
Tonight's show is all about newsmakers. I'll get to the nursing mom and the journalist who match wits with Bill Bulger in just a couple of minutes. But first, I'll challenge a leader of the national protest movement against the Iraq war. With the public on their side, why can't they win the showdown with President Bush? Let's meet my guest. Tom Andrews is a former Democratic congressman from the state of Maine. He now serves as the national director of an organization called Win Without War. With the defeat of the latest Democratic proposals to withdraw troops over time, is your side basically acknowledging this is a wait and hold operation until the new president is elected?
You know, it's very, very frustrating for all of us. The fact that there's obviously a strategy on the part of the Republicans to tie up the Congress, to basically lock it down so that the vast American public's vast majority of American public want this war to be turned around, will not have an opportunity to do so. So what we're doing is we're focusing on those members of Congress who live in congressional districts like Maine, like New Hampshire, states like Maine and New Hampshire, who have senators or representatives who are voting against the will of the public.
With the hopes that they might change their votes prior to November of 08 with that election looming in the distance?
Yes. Every day that goes by, we see two things. One, we see things getting much, much worse in Iraq, despite what the president has been saying and what General Petraeus said 2 weeks ago. And we see, of course, we're one day closer to the election of 2008.
But the public agrees with you. So why have the Democrats and, frankly, the anti-war movement failed so miserably?
Well, when you have a movement, a Republican movement, that is so committed to supporting this president, despite the wishes of the vast majority of their population, they have the capacity. Listen, you need 60 votes in the Senate in order to get a vote. You need 67 votes in the Senate in order to override a veto. We don't have those votes. So the Republicans, as long as they can remain in lockstep, and so far they have, with some exceptions, Olympia Snow in Maine turned over a few months ago, as long as they can hold that, they're going to be able to tie this Congress up in a knot.
There was an opportunity where their votes weren't needed when the Democrats blinked, when there was back and forth, when they passed a bill that tied additional funding, a defense spending bill, to a specific timeline. The president vetoed it. Why didn't the Democrats just say, fine, we'll send it back to you yet again. You explain to the American people why you're not funding them. Essentially what the Democrats seem to do is, we don't trust the public, even though the public is allegedly with us. They blinked, end of story. Wasn't that it? They didn't need all those Republicans for that.
No, I mean, the president needs 51 votes in order to get a budget passed. And if the Congress or the Senate doesn't give him those votes, he doesn't get his budget. The problem is that the messaging machine of that White House is so powerful that it's scaring the bejesus out of these members of Congress, because they're going to paint this picture. If Congress does that, they're going to say, well, the Congress doesn't support the troops, those Humvees are going to run out of gas, it's going to be a disaster. So for fear of that happening, look, their messaging machine was so good before the invasion that right today, there was a poll taken last week, a third of the American public still believe that Saddam Hussein was linked to the 9/11 attacks.
Sorry, but the messaging, to use your term, Tom, prior to the invasion had the public on the side of the President of the United States. The public, by equal numbers, in reverse, is against this. So essentially the Democrats and you work in an environment where the American people are saying, I want to be convinced. I'm with you, right. And yet there has been no ability on the Democratic side, despite their votes, to move people.
You know, the American people and the Iraqi people have something in common. They all want American troops out. 97% of the Sunnis in Iraq, 83% of the Shia in Iraq want American troops out. 2/3 of them say the violence has gotten much worse since our surge began, and they believe that it's fully justified. 2/3 of them feel it's fully justified for their troops to attack our young people.
But that makes my question even more pertinent.
Exactly.
The American people want us out. Phase withdrawal, not one of those, use that ridiculous expression, cut and run. You say the Iraqi people say the same thing.
Exactly.
So the disconnect is there's a good press operation in the White House? Is that what you're saying?
That's number one. Number two, we have to shore up the backbone of the Democrats in Congress to say, look, we can overcome that messaging juggernaut. We can deal with the repercussions, but you've got to do the right thing. The problem is that it's really not in Washington. The issue is going to be in these congressional districts. I'm traveling all over the country. I just got back from the West Coast. We've been in Minnesota. We've been in New Hampshire and Maine, North Carolina, Kentucky. And so really, it's going to have to be public pressure. And listen, if the first principle of being a politician, I was one for 12 years, is knowing how to count. And if you're sitting in Maine and you have 2/3 of the population, and we've been polling on this, wanting your U.S. Senator to oppose the president, well, you've got to start thinking about that.
But the clock is running. I mean, I said to you before we went on the air that I made the mistaken prediction that as we got past Labor Day, with the elections, the November elections, 14 months away, 2 out of 3 seats in the Senate, Republican seats, the Republicans would start dropping like flies.
That's right.
And unlike Warner, who eventually came over and won to vote and then went back on yet another, they seem to be holding firm. Many people think it's your fault, and I mean collectively. People point to that MoveOn.org ad. I've heard you say it didn't kill anybody, but a lot of people say that it solidified Republican support for George Bush because they had a sort of a whipping boy, MoveOn.org.
Right.
That's a fair statement, is it not?
Well, it's not a fair statement, because what you had is, again, this vaunted message machine. Look, at that ad spoke the truth. The fact of the matter is that General Petraeus cooked the books. I mean, those facts were an actual distortion of what the truth is. He's saying violence is down, violence is up. The Pentagon issued a report 3 days ago, Jim. It said that the average daily death toll in Iraq has gone from 130 per day in June to 150 a day now. All the key benchmarks leading to success, all of them have failed. He comes in and makes this report. Now, how is it that he can say such progress is being made when none is being made? Well,
but that ad also. Sorry, go ahead.
But I'll tell you why. He says, okay, if you get shot in the front of the head, that's not sectarian violence. If it's Shia on Shia or Sunni on Sunni violence, that's not.
People may think you're making this part up. This is true.
This
is the new characterization of casualties.
They recalculated casualties in 2006 to make 2007 look better.
But
so
Tom,
the point of the ad was true.
But didn't they overplay? But it wasn't just what his current testimony was. They talked about his prior record of truth-telling or not, at the same time that the Senate, including all the Democrats, voted unanimously to put this guy in place. And then they feel so backed into a corner that virtually all the Democrats, except those running for president, voted for this 3-to-1 resolution condemning MoveOn.org. Almost painted them in a corner, too.
Right, and this is how backward, this is how horrendous this is. Here you have kids in harm's way in the middle of a civil war that they shouldn't be. We're spending $10 billion a month on this debacle. It's getting worse. And what do? We pass resolutions about an advocacy organization running an ad, when the truth behind that ad, not a peep about any of the facts that ad disclosed. This is a really horrendous thing, and that's why the Democrats, I think, are so fearful, is because of this message machine taking an ad and making that the news, as opposed to this debacle in Iraq.
We also have 30 seconds left. Speaking of fearful, should some Democrats be fearful of you? Meaning, if Democrats, I know you're talking about knocking off Republicans who have been an obstacle here, but if there's some Democrats who've said the right thing, but are amongst the blinkers, for lack of better expression, on these funding things, do you run Democrats or attempt to run Democrats against these sitting incumbent Democrats in primaries?
You know, there's an old principle in politics. You may not be able to show a politician the light, but you can always make him feel the heat. And there's going to be a lot of heat out there in those congressional districts. Congress refused to hold the president accountable. We're in this debacle as a result. We are going to hold members of Congress accountable.
Will they, prior to November of 2008, will there be a vote in the United States Congress to begin with phased withdrawal of troops from Iraq?
Yes, they will.
Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Good luck. Tom Andrews, appreciate it. See you again soon.